Round 3. What a do and what a be. How are you and are you free? Things to consider. And yeah, please understand that these videos, they're not redundant. Even though it can seem that way. You know, we're taking so many different angles of the whole concept and states of freedom and being free and all these things, you know? And yeah, we got Brandon Spencer back and Theo Luke's in the house. And it's cool. It's cool to get different angles that still tie into making sense in this formula for actual fucking freedom, you know? Triple F, right? What the hell? So, here we go again, my friends. And yeah, if you can't get enough of that Freedom Lovers pizza and you still had a bon appetit, check out that good old Freedom Under Natural Law. You know, the conference, and Kris, Brandon, and myself were, and Theo, we're all up in there. Us first three, we all did presentations. Theo contributed some music, and yeah. So there are other presenters in that conference that actually lay down some of the fine print and blueprint to get a better idea of how we can really transition to a more hermetically sealed society, as I like to say. So, yeah.
The force that governs it all. Natural law.
Consciousness rising.
There we go.
Hey there. How's it going, Kris? Great job.
Hey, thanks. Welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Bienvenue, mon ami.
Yeah, you got any topics that you want to talk about, or something you saw struck your interest, or anything else?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it can sound quite. You can hear me all right, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can sound quite daunting. You know, the true total freedom, you know, absolute, and all these things, and yeah, it can be quite a tall task. Yet, yeah, it's just we have to start where we're at and just take those incremental baby steps towards, you know, this goal, even if it can't even be achieved in this lifetime. Because yeah, it's like it's easy to lose sight and lose our motivation and that kind of stuff. But I kind of put into perspective, you know, like back in ancient times when, you know, they believed in, you know, their whatever religion so staunchly, wholeheartedly, that they spent their whole entire lifetime building, helping to build a cathedral that they wouldn't even see the finished results of. You know what I mean? So we kind of have to think about it like we have to lay down this proper foundation for the next generations, I guess, you know, because I don't think we're going to be able to see this total freedom in this lifetime. And that's something we have to come to terms with, accept, and just, you know, carry on regardless. Hey, what's up, Brandon? And what's up, Theo? I saw you in the chat earlier.
Yeah, if Theo
Come
wants
on
to
in.
come in. Hey, Brandon. Thanks for coming on by.
What's up? Just getting some of my tech straightened out. Just give me a quick second, all right?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I think I had a quote about that, Derek, with in Funnel 4, the idea of, you know, plant a tree that you will never get to sit under its shade and benefit from. And that's what we're doing, because, like I said, like, it's not happening in our lifetime. But that's what we're working towards is the future. That's why in a lot of my work I emphasize the importance of the future. The future is what we actually live for. We live in the now. So yes, present moment awareness and all that. And you don't want to have anxiety for the future or depression of the past, things that happened. and work through some stuff, whatever happened in the past. But the future is where we're heading. As soon as the present happens, it's immediately the past, technically, because then all the processing and our awareness, and then it's our memory, and that's already the past. And the things, everything we do, and then what we live for, and what we're trying to create, well, we're always looking towards the future of what we're going to do next. What am I doing later today? What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing next year? And that's what the great year is all, not the great year, the great work is all about, is that future that we can create, that we're working towards. And, we got to have the eye of providence, the little eye of providence within us and that's like our fate and our destiny, that we are in control, like the Terminator, fate is what we make of it. So, things aren't predestined, and we can
Not that dark
change
fate, right?
things. What?
Not the dark fate. I think that's one of
the
the
last one, I think it was called
wondrous
Dark
movies.
Fate.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
whatever. Anyways.
Here comes Theo.
Hey, what's up, Theo?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hey, what's
buddy.
going on? Good to see you all.
Thanks for tuning in,
Yeah,
everybody. Good to have you here.
Oh yeah.
So if anyone has any comments or anything about anything that happened on part 3, part 2, part 1, or natural law in general, or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, of course, great presentation as always. This one, of course, you kept it simple. It kind of reminded me of your, what is it? 'Cause I took some notes here. Your natural law causal agents, 45-minute video, and the slides are kind of similar, especially when you talked about, in order to reach freedom, it's going to be a group effort, based on doing the right behavior. So I pulled up that slide because I always thought that was one of your more, better slides, because, you talk about how as the individual, and you kind of touched upon this, when you was talking about the group, how, of course, how individual rights and how individual sovereignty should come first. So as the individual, we put how actions back out into the world from a subjective, standpoint. We put those how actions back out into reality. So, how as a group, how as a collective, we're all going to reap what, reap as, how what we sow, how back into the world. And this kind of what this presentation, how kind of how reminded me. But I've seen a theme in the past 3, and you are really hammering on the conditions as far as, what conditions are going to be present. Because depending on what conditions, we create and put out into the world, the more and more, we, add to those conditions, then we're going to get a result, hence a consequence. And that consequence doesn't necessarily always have to be, bad or negative, which a lot of people always equate, consequence with something that's bad. Consequence can be something, good too. Just, sort of like you said, it's just a result. So yeah, it seems you are hammering on, how conditions, because conditions can be changed, like the state, the state of mind can be changed. And that's a thing that I've seen kind of in the past 3, presentations that you put out.
Yeah, that's like you said, laying the groundwork. Well, that's what in the explanation of the law, the laws of nature, natural laws, is that's what they're all taking as initial conditions, and then that process, those fundamentals in the universe, will then allow certain things to happen or not. So that's where you get initial conditions produce the resulting conditions. And yeah, that's what I'm laying the foundation for how laws operate, and using gravity to juxtapose the law of freedom and consequence as a result, because that's what, as I mentioned, karma is what's coming next, and that's what I'm going to get into. I guess I have my karmic cosmology that I will lay out, and some issues I have with how other people can view things, like the Eastern religion one, and I find there's a lot of absence of free will in the view of trying to create a framework to answer the question why. You know, I have a funny picture from I think it's Dawson's Creek, and the guy's like crying, and then the captions, "Why? Why me? Why?" So that's why, you know, people ask, well, why did this happen to me? And so when you have a question, well, you're going to try to find an answer, and then you're going to use your imagination to try to find an answer. So when you come up with these concepts to try to explain why something happened to you, and then you can come up with like a framework for why does everything happen to anybody. Well, then the conclusion they come to will, especially in the Eastern one, that ties into their whole caste system, and that false, as I view, a false conception of karma is, well, you deserve it. You know, that's your karma. Why are you in the lower part of the caste system? Well, that's your karma. You got to live with it. You got to accept it. And, you know, that's their idea of the past lives. So you did something wrong in a past life, so now you're paying for it, and you just got to accept it. And so it's all this learned helplessness and not being able to do anything. It's very disempowering.
Yeah, you can't change, health conditions that you're in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it's your karma, and you did something, and you just paying that debt. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I'll be getting into that and how that, you know, is the answer people come up with. Why? Well, you did bad, so you get bad, and you did good, so you get good. That's why you got the good, because you did something good before. That's why you got something bad, because you did something bad before, and that's what you deserve, and that's what you're worthy of, and that's what, I forget the other synonyms. I was working on it tonight, but yeah, so when that happens, then people tie it also into, well, if that's not how it works, well, then that means that things aren't fair. So things have to be fair. People want things to be fair. And that ties into the ideas of, well, there has to be order, this automatic ordering in the universe that's going to bring you what you put out. And it has to be the exact same polarity. So if you get bad, well, that's because you did bad. And if you get good, that's because you did good. But it's all a deterministic view of only these automatic processes in the universe, and they're leaving out free will. So where's free will in that? Well, no, sometimes people can choose to do bad things, like you got something that they want, and they're just going to try to take it from you. And well, it has nothing to do with you doing something bad in the past in terms of like a direct one-to-one relationship. But yeah, there's a lot of bad ideas I view as that are like disempowering to people related to karma.
They forget that chaotic, your input called free will. Yeah. That can just create chaos and that randomness. Yeah. Great
Right.
point.
Anyone want to bring up anything else?
So,
Go ahead, Theo.
yeah, so
Okay.
since we're getting a little bit into Eastern philosophy, I've been studying it. I'm living here in the Eastern side of the world, and it's kind of natural for me to get a little bit into Buddhism. So I have a book that I shared in the Europa group that is basically about the original teachings of the Buddha. This is some of them, but it's compiled in a very easy to read manner. So I think it's really useful for people just getting into it, like me. And what you talked about reminded me of something I was just reading yesterday, which is the 10 subjects for frequent recollection by one who has gone forth, I guess, forth into the path or the Dharma. So there are 10 Dharmas that should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. What are these 10? So number one is, I am no longer living according to worldly aims and values. Number two, my very life is sustained through the generosity of others. Number three, I should strive to abandon my former habits. 4, does regret over my conduct arise in my mind? 5, could my spiritual companions find fault with my conduct? 6, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing will become. will become separated from me. 7. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma, and whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. 8. The days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? 9. Do I delight in solitude or not? And 10. Has my practice borne fruit with freedom or insight so that at the end of my life, I need not feel ashamed when questioned by my spiritual companions? So these are the 10 dharmas, and I feel like it connects pretty well to what you just discussed. Good to reflect upon.
Yeah, I had my mic muted on the stream. I scrolled down in OBS and it was in red, so no one will have heard, I guess, anything I said before. That sucks. Yeah, dharma is tied to karma, because dharma is what's right or justice, the law, the aspect associated with law, and karma is just action. That's all it means, is action, a deed. And then it gets just twisted into, so when you do an action, it's not isolated by itself. There's a result from that action. That's why it gets associated with consequence. But then it goes off onto other tangents, which is unfortunate. But yeah, your karma is what you choose to do, and then your dharma is where like I guess the spirit in which you do it in. What is it aligned with? Is it aligned with what's right, what's just and true and moral, or not? I don't know if the dharma would also apply to the opposite, as like a positive or negative dharma. I think it's just a positive aspect.
Well, according to one definition I read, is dharma is kind of like about living according to natural law, basically, really,
Yeah.
or at least attempting to, right? Like, so basically, all of us are on our own dharma, right? Dharmic path, and yeah, karma is basically just action, and yeah, it's about being responsible for your actions, for your free will choices. It's like you better own it, like, accept it, accept what you've done, and try to do better with your future actions. Don't deny your karma, like stuff like that. I think that's what people need to reflect on, like, because people like to kind of neglect, ignore, avoid all those things, and it's not really useful at all. It's just gonna delay the karma, or like delay the consequences of the karma that you're trying to avoid or ignore, and it's not gonna lead to future good karma. So
Yeah, it kind of just goes back to planting those seeds, and we reap what we sow. And I think all you fine gentlemen here, we're all kind of like these natural, not necessarily permaculture, possibly omniculture, farmers in a sense, if you will, stewards of the land, and just trying to spread the proper messages of morality that is going to lead to freedom. And yeah, Kris, I really like that slide you had where you show the extremities of whatever. Right? You have the overt slavery and the covert, right? And so, yeah, we're kind of caught in this, the covert aspects of slavery. People don't really understand the wool's been pulled over their eyes and all this stuff. And so we're hanging out in this like comfort zone, and people don't know. It's really hard for people to get out of that comfort zone. And even, thinking about this with, the whole path work and doing the great work and all this stuff, we have to be conditioning ourselves to be more comfortable outside of these conditioned comfort zones, right? and there's a lot of aspects just on the individual level, but also as a collective, right? So yeah, there's always like the fear of the unknown and all this stuff. Well, like c'est la vie, les amis, kind of thing. You know, like it could be worse continuing down this horrible path, the garden path, if you will, with, you know, the candy coated slavery type of stuff, or we could really forge that new proper path, right, with the proper foundation. And kind of joking around, you know, in the good old alchemical kitchen, trying to concoct a proper recipe for the freedom lovers pizza, if you will. You know, you got to start with the proper foundation, you know, the dough, right, if you will. Not too crusty, right? But but that foundation, it just has to be, you know, you have another metaphor. The bedrock of which things need to be built upon need to be those eternal principles, natural law, you know, the law of freedom and all these things, right? So, and then you get the toppings and all this stuff, and then you get to the, you know, first things first, as far as like principles, right? Principia, like the first things that need to be kind of established for people to really internally uh, just get it and operate from there. As far as, you know, what to, I mean, like we have to not be complicit to all these things that are holding us back, right? So I totally lost my train of thought a little bit, but yeah, that would be a bon appetit, right? Like
the bedrock of those principles is definitely a great metaphor. And yeah, what you said before about building the cathedral, I also think about it like because, you know, in the fake history they say that the pyramids were built in 20 years, or the Great Pyramid was built in 20 years, which is doesn't make any sense, because you would have to put a block of stone every 3 minutes. That doesn't make any sense at all. So, and yeah, those block of stones weigh like the same as an elephant, each one of them. So it's clear that it was built over many generations if you use logic. So yeah, like you said about cathedral, people wouldn't see the fruits of their labor in their lifetimes. In the case of the pyramids, generations wouldn't see the fruits of their labors in their lifetime. So yeah, that's a good metaphor to think about when doing the great work. We are placing a pyramid block every day that we do the great work, and we might not see even the base of the pyramid built in our lifetime, but at least we put those foundations, this bedrock, right?
For sure.
Yeah, speaking of foundations, you know, trying to reach people, you know, having a good understanding and correct understanding of definitions is key and hell important when it comes to planting those seeds, from what I have observed. And that's what I've, you know, learned from Kris's work is, you know, hell, you can get into a lot of semantic arguments, you know, with people. And if you, you know, trying to convey this message, if this individual has a different definition, you can waste a lot of time, you know, so being able to define your words correctly is always a good plus, you know, when it comes to communication. And that's why this one, part 3, should be almost like required watching for most people, because it's so simple, you know, so easy to understand, you know, how easy to understand words, you know, how with clear definitions. It's like how I think Theo has said, like, Kris, how your work should be taught a lot, how mandatory, because it seems like a lot of your work can be tailored toward a lot of people who were kind of more like left brain or like in like computer world. Because what in your part 2, you had talked about, or you had like equated the law of freedom with programming. So you know, how would you say like your work can also be more used if someone is kind of more like left brain or like into like the computer, you know, like kind of like computer technological realm?
Yeah. I'm pretty left brain in my thinking, I guess. I have right brain as well. You know, true story. In Quebec, there's only, well, I know and school systems are like different all over the place, but we have K through 11. We don't have a K through 12. In other parts of Canada, it's like kindergarten. And then you do 1 to 6. That's your elementary school. And then you have high school. In Quebec, it's 7 to 11. So you graduate at 17, not 18. And then we have a stupid thing called CEGEP, which is like college, but it's like a continuation of high school. Anyways, I digress into that. But in my 11th year, I got out of, I was always in Roman Catholic education for like the, I don't know, I guess it was the religious or moral education thing. And then the last year I went into just moral education. And there was a quiz in that one. So it had nothing to do with the church, but they tried to teach you. It's hilarious how they call it moral education and they don't even teach you morality because no one fucking understands the definition of morality. So they're all just like, we're going to call it moral education. Well, what's moral? They don't even have the definitions. It's so ridiculous. You know, it plays what you mentioned, Brandon. It's so important, definitions, and people just use words without even knowing what they mean. And you'd think going into moral education, they'd at least give you a definition. No, because they don't know fucking shit about it. And but anyways, there was a quiz of like you answer a bunch of questions. I forget how many there were. And the questions were, they had a number. So I'm guessing like the ones that were more left brain maybe had a lower number, and the ones were like right-brained questions had a higher number. And then in the end, you added up all your numbers, and then you ended up on like a scale, right? So here, I guess you guys see this as left. Well, this is my left. I'm just gonna go with my left. So my left, or you go your left, and you're right, and you're on the scale. So everyone who was saying what their scores were, they were somewhere in the left and the right. And mine was right in the middle. It was 51. It was like 1% towards the left, like just one number over to the left. And I was like, I think your test is broken because I'm not on one side or the other. And the teacher was like, no, it's not broken. That's okay. That's just some people are more, you know, they have a mix of both. So I do have a left brain tendency. That's what I'm more geared towards, and that is indeed, as you noticed, Brandon, that's what my work is quite geared towards, because I want to make it into something that can be understood using the rational mind, and that you can verify these things. So that's why I go into the detail and try to relate it to reality in ways that people can understand in that left brain capacity, as opposed to like just trying to intuit it, or because that's can get you into trouble, just intuiting. Well, that feels right. It must be true. I don't need to go deeper and figure it out anymore.
Right, yeah.
Clarity.
Yeah, how you're big into logic.
Yeah. And the code analogy, I found that useful because, well, if you don't know code, you know, I had that, whatever, that function that I made up just to show an example of like, you know, that could just show an aspect of correspondence and analogy of how, you know, maybe the laws do function like code, and maybe it is code, but we don't know if it is code because we can't see the code. But there's a lot of similarities because code and consciousness function the same way too, where you have an input and we process and we have an output. And that's also how that core functionality in reality, those processes, they, like Passio says, how does he phrase it? Like, it's intelligently rearranging reality based on what we output from us. So what we output is an input into reality, right? In my whole, you know, circle of life thing, it goes through us, and then we output our actions, but that goes back into reality, and then it can go affect other people, and then they do the same thing and output, but that was an input for them, and then reality changes, and then it comes back as input to us, and it's just every millisecond, constantly, forever. That's what's happening.
This infinite feedback loop.
Yep.
Yeah.
With everything in the universe, you know.
Yeah.
You kick a rock, well, the rock falls down a hill and then splashes in a puddle, and the puddle has ripples, and, you know, causality is everywhere, and it has the most profound, I guess, I view it as most profound impact in us as consciousness, beings of consciousness, especially with our level of consciousness and free will, that we can interact in those causal deterministic mechanisms with our free will, and we can choose among a variation of possibilities for what we can create and modify the world into. And right now it's poor choices overall. We can do a lot better than the slavery we've come up with, but it'll be around for a while until consciousness evolves and rises to higher potentials, and then things can change. But until then, that's what we got. We got what we want in the aggregate. People want control of authority to feel safe and secure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the mommy daddy issues, right? In like the nanny granny state and all these things, and just it goes back to these comfort zones, and it's kind of like a Linus from Peanuts. You know, he's always got that blanket, his little comfort zone, and to like rip that blanket away, it's kind of like uh, grown ass adults, without their government, like, oh, I don't want to take responsibility and just work with the community type of thing, and of course, like we all understand that it's not just the government that's the problem. There's the corporate entities and all the hidden hands behind hidden hands, and yeah, right. But yeah, it's just people need to just cross this threshold and extract that mind virus and stop smeagling what they think is freedom in a sense through government, and like this ring of power is just it's that absolute power corrupts absolutely type of thing. And yeah, and yeah, Brennan, myself and the One Great Work Warriors, we had a really cool chat about like anti-hero and like mainstream psychopathy, and thinking about that and trying to like correlate it with the government is kind of like they're psychopaths and all this, right? So they're kind of conditioning other people underneath, under one nation, right, to kind of have this mini me mentality to a degree, in a sense, right? Yet yeah, we're always going to feel lesser than like the almighty elites and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just interesting in thinking about, all right, so the anti-hero story, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm reaching a little bit loosely because I didn't really like garner any thoughts. I'm kind of thinking out loudly, but like the founding fathers and all that, the American history of trying to break away from the crown, the British control, and all that stuff, and then setting up a proper republic with that constitution and all that stuff. Yet over time, yeah, of course there's infiltrations and all that stuff, and it's like they became the monster that they set out to defeat, in a sense.
Yeah. I'll
And
pass
it's a
you.
lot more complicated than that, of course, like as I mentioned, infiltration and whatnot. But I don't know, it's
No, yeah,
things
that's
to
actually
consider.
something that came to my mind. That like because Kris mentioned that like we're getting what we want, but I was thinking like, do we really want slavery and like this kind of government and external authority and all this stuff and no freedom, no internal monarchy, no all those good things, right? I was thinking, obviously, we don't like inherently we don't want those things. Those things are kind of like we are born into them, and we just accept them as just the way the things are, and like we just think, okay, well, this is the world I'm in. I have to do my best in this world, and like bow down to all those structures and all those external authorities and all this stuff. But yeah, like Derek, you mentioned, what also came to my mind is like those things have been imposed on civilizations, like those dark occultist elite families, those perpetrators of war. They like sometimes we call it like the Roman Empire, Babylon, and like there's many names to call this very, very ancient evil empire, basically, that's still ruling to this day, basically. And yeah, it has conquered basically the whole world. So those ways of thinking and those behaviors and those conditions, they have been imposed on all of us, and to such a degree and for such a long time that we have forgotten what we truly want, what is our true purpose, and what true freedom really is even.
Yeah.
So obviously a good way to start is definitely, like also Kris, like you mentioned, with definitions, like clarifying things, because like with moral, like the word moral is so dirty these days. When you think about, like, in the Arab countries, you have the moral police, which will kick the ass out of some woman if she doesn't wear some headdress or some whatever the fuck they wear there, which is really terrible. Like I feel bad for the women there, and yeah. I don't want to get into too religious topics. I know this can be some conversational territory. We are on YouTube and all that. Anyway, you know what I mean. It's there's nothing moral about putting a woman in a cage or beating her up because she doesn't wear some clothes.
Yeah, hijacking words. So they just use a word and then, well, we're going to say that we're moral, but we're going to do the opposite because we're going to impose our will upon you, which is immoral. That's coercion. And if you don't do what our will says you must do, then we're going to hurt you. So then they're immoral some more. But then they're calling themselves moral. I have an early article. It's like a few paragraphs from over 10 years ago. It's evil, like something along the lines of evil veils itself in the illusion of goodness. Evil veils itself in the image of good. That's how, because they're not like trying to sell you, hey, we're trying to take over the world. Hey, we want to enslave people. You want to join our team? Marx joked about it maybe once or twice in his podcasts. And that's not how they're selling it to you. They're selling it to you under the veil of good. It's, oh, look at us. We are doing so much good and we are here to help you. You need us, because that's what the psychopath sells you. They sell you about how important they are and how good they are, but they're actually evil. So that's the whole inversion thing. They're inverting everything, and they're selling people on this inversion. And the condition you're in isn't really an excuse, because you are conditioned by the condition. So you're conditioned, programmed, habituated, influenced into the condition you're born in. So whatever that condition is, well, you view it as normal. So one of the big mind controls is normalization. It's a standard of society. It's how things are normal. And then since that's normal, well, you just accept it. Well, that's normal. And then it becomes natural. And then it's necessary, right? I think I had that in the last slide there with the chart. People view it as normal, natural, and necessary. So then they got to keep doing it. But that's not true. You don't have to keep doing it. And Passio's mentioned it too, that if people didn't want the slavery, there wouldn't be slavery. So deep down at some level, they want it. They don't know it's slavery. So if they had the actual definitions, like we're talking about here, right? Going deeper with definitions, if they had the definition of what slavery actually is, rather than that myopic little definition of, well, slavery is only if you're working in the field or if you're in chains, or whatever definition of that overt form of slavery. They don't understand the covert forms. They don't understand it's like many things. It's along a dualistic conceptual framework, a spectrum of degrees. And so they completely dismiss anything else. But if they knew it was slavery, then they would recognize that there's something that should change. But because they don't see it as slavery, and because they're in the normal, natural, necessary aspect of the conditioned by the condition, then they just accept it as, well, oh, there's nothing wrong about this, because they're unthinking. They don't live an examined life. The alleged Socrates quote, an unexamined life is not worth living, because they don't engage in deeper thought, in questioning what their way of life is. Or, I'm doing this, well, should I do it? The David Icke that Passio's quoted, about cutting the we could call it a tofurkey or whatever into the pan, and you cut the edges because the pan was shaped like an octagon sort of, and so they keep cutting it, and they don't know why, but they just keep cutting it. So that's what we're doing in society. We keep doing what we've been doing because we're conditioned by the condition to perpetuate the condition, which then conditions more people to perpetuate the condition, and it just keeps going and going and going because people are not actually thinking. I went into this in the Natural Law, the Science of Morality, Part 2, and Slavery, about, well, that's when you're a robot. I think in the etymology of robot is it's a slave, because that's what it is. That's what you're doing. And that's what order followers do, is they become robots. They become literally mind slaves where they do not question. So that's what we're talking about when you're in a self-examined life, when you're doing self-reflection, when you're questioning, should I be doing this? Is this the way things should be? Can they be different? Let's imagine different and better ways. Well, you're not questioning, and that's what a robot doesn't do. It's input. There's a predetermined algorithms that determine what you can process with that input, and then you output. And it's always going to be the same thing. The same conditions produce the same results. That's how code works. That's how law works. And the difference with consciousness is you can have the same results every time, and every time, even with the same conditions, consciousness can choose a different result. And that's the amazing thing and the empowering thing about our level of consciousness and our level of free will compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, is that, they're in my morality presentation, I went into it, and all animals by default are amoral because they do not have the understanding, the capacity to understand what is moral or immoral. But we have so much more power because instead of being on that amoral center, we have the capacity to understand these concepts and what our behavior does in relation to these concepts that we can define. And so we have the capacity for, Spider-Man quote, where with great power comes great responsibility. Well, the great power we have is to create good or evil. And that's very powerful. And we are, someone posted, I think in the Europa, I think it was Yvonne, the most dangerous animal. That one's like pretty related to the whole non-carnist versus carnist aspect of living, where we take what we want from all the animals and we have no regard for them, and we are the most dangerous because of our high degree of free will and how we can alter and affect the world around us. And that makes us very dangerous. And we could be choosing to do so much more good than the evil that we're doing. So that's the power we have, and the responsibility we have is to align with objective morality, natural law, and to choose in those requirements. Brandon's got a presentation, I forget the exact title, but it's got requirements in there. What are the requirements to freedom or something like that? And so that's what we're talking about is, I mentioned that was in the first one or the second one of the Law of Freedom, where you have, you're going to have your initial conditions, and then you're going to have your goal, your purpose, the reason for you to do something. Well, what are you trying to achieve? What are the ends that you're trying to achieve that goal? And then you can take an action. And in your result you get, and this is the scientific method, and what result did you get? Well, did you get what you wanted, or did you get what you didn't want? And either way you can learn, well, doing this gets me something I want. Doing this does not get me what I want. So then I need to go back to look at my procedure of, well, what am I going to choose as behavior, and modify your behavior. And then did you get what you want at that time? Well, then keep modifying it until you figure out how to get what you want. And those are the requirements. So what are the requirements? And people don't know that. They don't know they're in slavery, so they don't know the requirements to get a different condition. So yeah, they want good things. What Theo was saying, they don't want the slavery, yeah. But even if they did know, like many people do know, they went through Passio's work, but are they fulfilling the requirements? No. So they can say that they don't want what it actually is, even though they don't even know what it actually is. So they actually do want it because they like it the way it is, and they don't really want it to change, or they do want it to change, but they don't know how to change it. So they lack knowledge and the whole thing comes down to, well, you have to have the knowledge to fulfill the requirements in that process of how do you get what you want versus not getting what you want. And for now, well, they are getting what they want because, well, they're totally fine with the way the world is. They're not being like, oh, well, this isn't how I want things to be. Well, why? How can you get things differently? And then you got to start that knowledge quest. That's what it started for me in 2016. It started with Terror Storm. I watched that. I could only get through half of it. And yeah, the trivium. That's the why, the logic, the understanding. You got to ask that question why. And if you don't, you're not going to get to the understanding. So people, they might be like, oh, well, I don't like how things are and la 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 la. But then they keep on going, going with the flow. They're not going to try to change it, change the current, make it change in a different direction, not inputting themselves into the aggregate as a different pathway to try to make it different. Because they're not thinking the requirements. They're not thinking about, well, how do you change it? And it's just going to keep going because they haven't started that the spiritual path of truth, the knowledge quest, initiation, beginning that journey, and trying to figure things out. They're too busy trying to live life and have fun, and that's that hamster wheel. And like Brandon mentioned, that natural law causal agents infographic. People are just, you're born, you live, you survive, you enjoy life, you procreate, and then you die, and then everyone repeats it. And very few people engage in that self-reflective, introspective, trying to figure things out and figuring out how to change them, which Passio has done a great service to humanity and to the universe and to truth to help us in figuring out the real way to make things change for the good.
Yeah. It seems like everyone is just stuck in survival, and no one's concerned about like evolution. Because I don't equate those to be the same. So, but yeah, great points.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to get to a point where you will seek those spiritual truths. You seek those deeper answers, deeper meanings, and deeper truths. Again, most people, like you mentioned, Kris, are there in the comfort zones and they're in the hamster wheel, and they don't know they're in the hamster wheel. They don't know that their comfort zone is actually very uncomfortable if you really kind of shed those skins of the snakes. Referring to the reptile class and all that shit. Anyway, that's kind of my point. Is like, to you have to seek it, and what would make you seek it, I think, is something like a world-shaking event in your life, a trauma, something like that. Like, I'm sure all of us in the One Great Work Network have had to go through some shit before we realized, or at least began to realize those truths and began to seek it, and then actually want to learn it, want to sit down and watch a 8-hour Mark Passio presentation. It's like, it's a lot to ask from a normie. But when a so-called normie has something that has happened to them that has shook their world, then they may be open to it. So I don't know if we have to go all the way to like a mercy comet that Mark is suggesting these days. But we can try to at least do it the peaceful way, one by one, and go easy on the people. The Mark Passio can appeal to many, but I think most people would need something that is a bit more relatable, a bit softer, to reach their hearts and minds. So that's the way I see it right now. And there's even an example like from the Buddha in the book, where there's a story about a woman who came to the Buddha saying that her child is very sick, he's been sleeping for days and he's not waking up. So she asked if the Buddha can heal her son, her little child. And the Buddha took a look at the child. I mean, the Buddha was not a doctor, but he said, okay, I will take a look, see what I can do to help. And he noticed that the child is dead. He's already completely dead, beyond help. So, but the woman was totally clueless. So he knew that it would hurt her if he would just say he's dead. It would disturb her mind, right? So he figured something out. He said to her, okay, I'll help you, but you have to bring me some medicine. And what you have to give me is some mustard seeds. And the lady thought, oh, that's great. I thought he would maybe ask for some like rare medicine or something, but mustard seeds are really common in India at that time. But he said, but not any mustard seed. You will have to bring me a mustard seed from a house in which no one has died before. And she said, okay, well, at least it's not something too rare. I will go try and find the mustard seed. So she went to a house. She asked, do you have mustard seed? And yeah, of course they have mustard seed. And so then she asked, has someone died in this house? And the person said, yeah, the grandfather died not long ago, just maybe a few weeks ago. Our grandfather died. So she took the mustard seed anyway, but she kept going, and she went to each and every house in the village, and in every house someone died. So it was already late at night, but it was the full moon, so she could find the way back to the Buddha. And she told the Buddha, I went to every house, and in every house someone died. So I guess I realized that I guess my son has died too, right? And the Buddha said yes. So I think that's that's an interesting way to think about how we can maybe reach the masses. Is like kind of do it that way, right? Like don't hit them too hard, like Mark Pesio. I mean, again, Mark Pesio is good for some, but I think for the most, it's better to like do it in a little bit of a roundabout way where they can integrate it more easily, and without trauma, without more trauma, right?
Yeah, we just gotta, I guess, not yell at them, make them feel bad. But that's why he says that they're babies. He's not there to spoon feed it to babies. He's there for the real men and the women who can take it and grow from it, and then go out and be teachers. And yeah, I'm not like I can get into asshole mode, but yeah, I try to do it in a calm way. In my earlier works, I was more swearing and I guess belligerent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm more I guess neutral now, and just trying to explain things and yeah, help people understand things deeper. I'm not the keep it simple, I guess, kind of guy. Keep it simple, stupid. That KISS principle, that doesn't apply to me. I go into a lot of detail for people to really understand it and integrate it, and then I guess you can integrate it in your life and embody that truth in a deeper way, and then explain it to other people in a deeper way potentially. Well, that's what I'm trying to do as well, is make teachers. I'm not doing it as a horizontal integration like Passio said either. I'm not trying to make it fit everybody. I'm not doing TikTok, YouTube shorts and all this stuff, trying to reach as many people. My content is, I guess, dry and complex and deep and boring to some, and so be it. But those who can find value in it, well, they can find value and gain, I guess, in that knowledge quest and deeper understanding of the important things of self-knowledge and natural law, so that we can grow that tree and eventually someone can sit under and appreciate the shade of it.
You know, it's ironic. Were you gonna say something, Brandon?
Yeah, because I've got
Yeah.
a huge fire when it comes to this particular topic. Because I've talked about this a lot, and yeah, sometimes the information can be a little boring. Sometimes it could take a lot. Sometimes it could, not be as entertaining. But if you have that fire, that willpower, and that inner desire to want to know, you will sit there and you will listen. Doesn't matter how hardcore it is. Doesn't matter how long the video is. And to get to Theo's point is, I think a lot of people are missing that internal flame, because they want to whine and they want to bitch and they want to find some kind of like shortcut or some kind of easy way to like understand this knowledge, and they don't want to go through that hard work that is required. Like, because if you look at, Chris's natural, moral law, alchemical, her distillation, the fire is what, sets things off, because the fire is what creates change. And without that burning desire, without that internal fire, without that flame, without that lamp, being lit, then the individual, won't set foot. They won't start. Not only if they do start, they won't, go into that next step of right action. So that fire is going to come internally, or it's going to come externally. There's going to be some kind of external force that's going to put enough pressure on you to where that change is going to come eventually. So since we aren't, doing that internal work, and since that internal fire is not being, lit, that force is coming externally that's going to force people, and that's why, you have people talking about, cataclysm, and like more force is going to be put on them, more pressure, is going to be put on them, because that force is going to come externally. That stress, that anxiety is going to ramp up, that people are going to be forced to change because they don't want to do that internal change, because that fire hasn't been lit. But it's going to come either way. And I have a very strong, passion about that, because a lot of people lack that fire and they don't really care for truth. They don't have that strong burning desire for it.
And that Passio fire, open that can of whoop ass and kick you into action. That's what it did for me. Even in his earlier work, because I started at 2013. I was starting it, and that's what I wrote. I wrote him one time, and I said, I finally kicked myself in the ass and started a site, and then in 2017 I got invited into the One Great Work network that he hadn't even started, but it was just an idea. But yeah, it's all about people. Now that's what a lot of people have told Passio to. They mention it, and when they call in, that they needed him as like the stern father figure to light a fire under their ass and like kick themselves in the ass, give them a good kick in the ass to like, go, come on, do something. And like Brandon and Theo mentioned, the chaos as a teacher. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people need, and it's sad because that's what we saw in COVID too. Was people weren't caring, and I mentioned in the funnel for one of my slides had that people had that fire ignited within them, and then it died down because they didn't have those, like Derek mentioned, the principles. They didn't have the foundation there. They didn't have the knowledge. So what we're talking about, definitions, you got to have those definitions. You don't have those principles. And so all they saw was that the level of slavery was like this, and then COVID came, and then it went up more, and so then they're like, whoa. Well, that's part of the cognitive biases we have, relates to attention bias. And so when you have like a blip, this is the normalcy. Again, we're talking about things we've accepted, the normalcy, natural, and it's necessary. And then the things affected them personally. So it was like, boop, oh, look at this discomfort, right? Theo, you mentioned comfort. So that was a level of discomfort that was applying in their lives. And then all of a sudden it became personal, and then they gave a shit. then they started to care. And a funny side thing, my presentation originally, when Kris Jansen was asking for funnel presentation titles, it's now called Truly Caring About Being Enslaved. But my original working title that I gave him was Learning to Give a Shit. That's what I had originally called it, because that's what my whole goal was, like getting people, truly caring about being enslaved. So learn to give a shit. And the people just don't until it personally affects them, because they're in that mini-me de facto Satanism. If it doesn't affect them, they don't give a shit. So COVID was like, oh, look, it's affecting you. Oh, now you give a shit. Oh, the measures got reduced again. Oh, well, now you're back to not giving a shit. So they had like care ignited a bit. It was like this little flame, and then it just extinguished after. They started waking up. There was like a little bit of, they woke up a little bit. They had that crud in their eye in the morning, their eyes barely awake. And then there's like, okay. And then they just went back to sleep. So things are fine for them. And chaos is the teacher, unfortunately. That's what a lot of people need. We saw it demonstrated. But back to what Brandon said earlier is, I think it was Brandon, when you're stuck in survival mode, you're too focused in surviving, the hamster wheel of survival. Well, then all your time is going to trying to survive. So then you're not really putting time and effort and attention into trying to figure things out, because you're so focused on survival. So there's that chaos aspect that can wake you up, but then the chaos can also keep you down because it's so consuming. And I think that's what the social engineers and the manipulators, there's like this middle ground, this like perfect area where they got us in now, is like that level of comfort and just caring. You have enough time to focus on survival, your job, and then with the extra time, you just want to spend it on enjoyment and amusement and entertainment. Those words, entertainment and amusement, have interesting etymology related to like and training the mind and captivating the mind, and that's what people do. It's survival and entertainment, and that's what they focus on. And they got people in like the perfect place to keep them comfortable slaves, that they want the comfortable slavery and they don't really want to get out of it.
They're lacking mindfulness. Like, they're human doings. They're not human beings, right? That's one key thing that I realized. Like, but I was also caught up in that. Like, even when I already was starting to do the great work and stuff like that, I was still very much in that hamster wheel, in terms of always feeling like I gotta do something, and having that kind of worry, or that kind of
chasing that
quiet
novelty.
anxiety.
I was gonna find new things to do.
Right. Quiet, like a quiet anxiety for it's, some of it is like having to always have new things, novelty. Yeah, other parts of it is kind of like the little hamster wheels inside of me, and to break out of them, it takes a lot of mindfulness and a lot of meditation and shadow work and those kind of things. So that's another very, very big key to unlocking truth, unlocking, igniting that flame is to be able to sit still and actually like see things for what they are, both within you and outside of you, and not feel like you always have to do something, because then you easily get caught in the machine. So it's to break free, to break the chains within you, and then you can start to break chains outside of you.
That's the breaks, man. No. Yeah, common theme. That flame. We gotta get it sparking within. And as Brandon, Kris, you were talking about, that external chaos is one hell of a teacher for sure. And the goal of education is to kind of avoid that on the individual level and on the collective. And so, like you hear someone like Mark Passio, oh, he's so angry, oh, he's yelling, oh, like, shut the fuck up. like they watched a sliver of his presentations. They kind of cowered to whatever degree, or just had a single impression, and it stuck like shit on the wall or whatever, right? And it's really unfortunate because I keep hearing it from people that seem to be quite intelligent, yet whatever. And anyways, and not everyone has to be like Mark Passio at all. He has his convictions for very good reasons, and that's to each their own type of thing, right? So not everyone is going to be trying to teach people that are at the level to become teachers themselves. No, we have to reach people even at the lowest common denominator. So we have to start where we're at, where we're comfortable with, speak from experience and what we've learned thus far, and keep leveling up and all that stuff, and keep refining. I was really unhinged when I first started. I was spitting a lot of vitriolic stuff because, I wanted to light a fire under humanity's ass. Since the dawning of the Rona is when I really started getting at it, just standing behind the scenes doing music mixes, and then getting more on camera and speaking directly and all that stuff. So there's a lot of different ways we can plant these seeds, right? And Kris talking about that tree there's that good old seed conference, which I thought you were in the last one, but I could be wrong. But I'm really glad you were at the last funnel conference. And it's just the networking is just coming. We're creating beautiful circles within circles, I think. So I know it's getting at the top of the hour. I'm sure you want to come full circle on this conversation, if you will. But I guess my final thoughts is that we have to find ways to spark interest and continue keeping on and sharing what we've already done thus far, because all our works are great reference points to bring up in conversation when we're on social media and talking to people, and a certain relative subject arises, and like, oh yeah, like Chris Nelson spoke about this, it's great, science and morality and that kind of stuff. So I've been doing that with my own music mixes. I try to keep that in mind with other people's, and so that's just one out of many different things that we can have at our disposal for sharing this type of information. And it just seems like it's a never-ending uphill battle against the multi-gazillion-dollar media propaganda machine, and that's just like 24/7 relentless bullshit. But we got folks like Brandon Spencer doing his own 24/7 live stream, and other folks, and the One Great Work Network. It's constant truth stream media, and that's double meaning, because there's a really great YouTube channel like that. And Kris, I think your work is just it's such a great high value resource for educational purposes, especially considering a lot of people trying to do like more homeschooling and that kind of stuff, and like creating I even thought about we can create learning curriculums revolving around your material already of what you've established, and so that'd be something that you should be compensated for if anyone does that. So things to consider with donations and whatnot, even if you learned a Shizer load from this man already. So anyways, that's all I got. Kris, thank you so much for inviting anyone who wanted to chat with you and all this stuff, and for your great work as well as always. So thanks, brother. Merci beaucoup.
You're welcome. Thanks for the kind words.
Derek, quick question. Would there be a music mix with Chris Nelson's words in the background?
Ooh, yeah, we could definitely do that. Sure, if you're cool with that, Kris.
Yeah, I don't have the profoundness of certain terminology or sentence like Passio can have.
Right.
or other
Like
people.
convictions
But
sometimes, but yeah. But Theo's trying to do more of that, so yeah, think about it. But yeah, thanks, Brendan.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure. And like I said, Chris Hill, you have been the one person who have, took, Pascal's work and have actually built on top of it, and that's what it's, all about, is trying to bring more to the table, bring more to the, discussion, find, what you've come to know and put it out there for others to, possibly learn as well, by not just believing you, but running it through that triggering process too, which is key. And hell is important. That way you're not just believing what you said, or what I said, or what Pasio said, or what anybody said, but hell, you validating hell, this information for yourself, and you verifying it hell, for yourself. And the more of us that do that, and the more of us that put it back out there hell, into the world, then others can possibly go through that same hell, modality. And that way we can all be on the same page when it comes to understand this universal truth. So yeah, thank you.
you're welcome. Well, glad to be providing material that even people who know Passio's stuff or other people's content, that they can etch out some more value and gain some more value to evolve their consciousness, increase their awareness of important key concepts and foundational principles to help them in whatever path that they're on. Yeah. Well, I guess we can end it there. And thanks everyone for coming on. I appreciate it. It's always good to have these conversations. These are gold in terms of conversations, especially when you look at, I guess, the normies, what they talk about, and what happens in their lives. And, I was like, okay, yeah, that happened to you today. So what? What is that doing other than, it's like, okay, maybe it's an interesting story, but people need to engage in more meaningful conversations. But yeah.
Or have a hermetically sealed twist to it, like, this happened to me, but using the mentalism and law correspondent, all this stuff, but the vibe and all, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's a way to slide it in there. I did this, and it actually operated by this principle that you might not know of. Yeah.
You gotta turn that small talk into big talk, right?
Yeah, that requires skills that I don't have, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you, Kris. Yeah, also very grateful for your work. You've been doing it for so many years, and you keep putting that fire, and you're consistent, and you're even getting better. So it's incredible to observe and to learn from you. So very, very grateful as well.
Thank you. You're welcome. So next week, I doubt I'll have a part 4 unless I go hardcore into reworking things, but I doubt it. Probably be in a few weeks. What I planned on doing was a real live presentation, this time live as live can be, and I was figured I'd do morality, the natural law, the science of morality, part 4, since it was an 8-hour presentation that I don't think many people like doing. even they see it's 8 hours and they're like, fuck this, I'm not even going to click on it. So I'll start doing that in segments, and then maybe more people can come across it as a shorter thing. And and then I'll keep working on the law of freedom and come with some fresh material when that's available. So if you guys are interested in coming on by for a law of freedom, for natural law, science of morality, part 4, morality, in an extended, shorter form, then you could come on by and have some discussions after that as well. So thanks for coming in again. appreciate you guys tuning in and joining the discussion live. So take care.
Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up.
The force that governs it all. Natural law.
Consciousness rising.
Keeping it conscious, project after project, words of forward progress.